Well, we sold the desk in my office, so I guess I'm gonna have to work somewhere else today.
Well, I guess this will just have to do. So this is actually the first time that I have been back in the office in like 10 days or something like that. So 2 weeks ago, my family and I contracted that virus that we've all been talking about for a really long time. So that kind of put us out for a little bit. And then I left last Sunday and headed up to camp. And I mentioned in the last video that that's where I was going to be. And there was something about the power of place and how being in particular locations changes how you think. It changes how creative you are, things like that. And so this past week, I actually made a big mistake when it comes to the world of creating things. I was headed up to camp and my wife, Rachel, texted me and she said, "Hey, you forgot something really important." And I automatically think that I left like a towel. I left something really important for camp behind. I left the camera battery and the charger at home in the wall. And so I wasn't able to actually record anything. I wasn't able to get any kind of B-roll. So any B-roll that you might see in this video actually came from the previous couple of weeks whenever we went up and spent just a day at camp, which is actually where we think we got that virus. So I'm finally back and I'm able to sit down and record, having not done so in a while. And really and truly, this has kind of been a really interesting few days because I've gotten to think some. Normally, like I'm trying to put something together and you just try to get it. But today I'm actually recording as a result of being disconnected for several days. When you go to Palmetto Bible Camp, there's no cell phone reception or anything like that. So you are very much so plugged in with the people who you're with. And that's actually what I want to talk about today. This has become a little bit of a mini series, if you can't tell. So last week I talked about how location affects your productivity, how it creates a sense of inspiration within you. Maybe if you've separated yourself from your normal everyday for a while. But last week at camp, we talked all about relationship. The theme was 3, and we focused in on 3 relationships that everybody needs in their life if they want to thrive, if they want to move forward. And ultimately, that's all what we really want to do. So obviously, I am a youth minister, so much of my thinking is geared around what it means for me and for those that I spend time with to become more like Jesus. And these relationships especially are intended to push you as you become more like Jesus every day. We're all talking about the spiritual transformation that we want so that we can grow, so that we can make a bigger impact on the world around us. So we talked about 3 different relationships, and one of them we kind of focused in on a little bit more. And the first one of those relationships is you need a Paul in your life. This is somebody who you can be led by. It's so important for you to have people in your life who are showing you the way, who are showing you how to get where you want to go. Maybe it's because they've been there before. I can think about times that I did internships leading up to where I am right now. One particular internship was actually more of an apprenticeship that lasted during the school year. It wasn't a summer internship like most of them were. And I got to work alongside somebody who is now one of my deepest, closest friends. His name is Corey Lee. And Corey knew what it meant to do youth ministry, but more importantly, he knew what it meant to live a life seeking after Jesus. And he showed me how to do that. He gave me opportunities to think, to wrestle, to grow in ways that I honestly wasn't expecting. He was and continues to be a Paul in my life. And then actually, I got to talk about the flip side of that relationship at camp this past week. I got to talk about having a Timothy in your life. So what I got to do was wrestle with, what does a Timothy actually need? What does a Timothy need from you? You know, sometimes we get nervous because a Timothy is somebody who you turn around and lead. And we get afraid because we're not really sure if we can lead. We don't feel qualified. We don't feel worthy. We feel like maybe if somebody actually knew who we were on the inside, they wouldn't want to follow us to begin with. And ultimately what I came down to was that Timothy's don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be present. They don't need you to have a ton of followers on social media. Ultimately, they really just need you to be faithful. They need you to be the loyal friend. They don't need you to have everything figured out. They just need you to be authentic. They just want to see you for the real you so that they know they can trust you. They can follow you and actually know that you're going to lead them in the right kind of direction. So you need someone in your life who is leading you, but then you also need to turn around and have someone coming up behind you who you can lead. That's how everybody continues to move forward. If we don't have anybody behind us that we're leading, there's not going to be anybody to come up after us and continue the work that we have started. So then the second half of the week, we talked about having a Barnabas in your life. Now, this guy named Barnabas, we meet him in Acts chapter 4. And it's this contrast between a story about a couple who kind of held back some money and didn't live completely honestly. And we think about Barnabas just for what his name means, which is son of encouragement. But Barnabas is actually a really fascinating person when you read into his story. He's more than just an encourager. He's somebody who stood by people. He's one who actually went to bat for some people. There was this cool story where Paul didn't want this guy named John Mark to continue on with them on one of the journeys that they were going because John Mark had flaked out earlier in the story. But Barnabas shows up and he goes to bat for John Mark and he says, no, I want him here with us because I know who he really is. So you need somebody in your life like that too. You need someone in your life who can stand up for you when maybe you can't stand up for yourself. But just like the traditional way that we look at Barnabas, you sometimes need somebody who's going to pour into you and encourage you and remind you of who you actually are. Because what I have found is it's really, really easy to forget that. It's really easy to forget who you are. It's easy to forget who you've been called to be. And when you get off track, when you get out of sync, when you get out of line with where you want to go, it's really easy to get off in left field. So you need somebody to encourage you, somebody to remind you who you actually are, what God says about you, instead of all of the other voices that you have going on in your life. So you need a Paul and a Timothy and a Barnabas in your life. Now, there are tons of other relationships that we wrestled with, having a Jethro. Somebody's going to come in and be a butt kicker for you. They're going to come in and tell you the things that you need to hear, even if you don't want to. I had an opportunity to teach a class about having a relationship with the Holy Spirit. We talked about how you cultivate a relationship with God through silence and solitude and stillness. All of these are kind of countercultural and counterintuitive to the way the world typically works. But it was all about having these relationships so that you can have a framework for the kinds of people you want to include in your life. It's not so much about giving you exact people who you need to have, but rather reminding you and showing you how to cultivate those relationships, knowing who you should include in your friend groups and who you shouldn't. Because here's what we ultimately know to be true. You will be shaped by the people you spend your time with. There's this interesting quote that says you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around. I know authors like Tim Ferriss and others have written books ultimately trying to seek that out. Who are the 5 people that I want to spend my time with? But then there's this other quote that I actually included in my class, and it said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And ultimately, it's about the people you spend your time with and the ways that they will influence you. I talked about how if you spend time with somebody with an accent, you probably will develop an accent just like them pretty quickly. You will look like the people you spend time with. You'll think like them. You'll have the same kinds of mentalities. If you spend your time with pessimistic people, you probably also will be pessimistic. But on the flip side, if you think optimistically, you probably have people around you who have done that exact same thing. So this past week was a reminder for me of the power of place, the power of location, the power of consistency, like we talked about 2 weeks ago. Because when you spend an entire week kind of 24/7 with a group of people, you get closer than you would if you just spent an occasional bit of time with them over the course of a few months. But when you immerse yourself into someone else's life, you get so much closer. And then I was reminded just of the power that people have in your life. So the invitation for you, the question for you might be, who are those 5 people that you're spending the most time around? Are those the kinds of people that you want to spend your time with? Are they the kinds of people who are leading you in the direction that you want to go? Or are they constantly leaving you feeling down? Are they the kind of people who are showing you what it means to live like Jesus, to live a flourishing kind of life? Or are they the kinds of people who are always pulling you down, always making you feel more pessimistic, always making you feel bad about yourself? Maybe you've got a group of friends who you're just trying to impress, but they don't really care much about you. So surround yourself with Pauls, people who are going to show you the way. Surround yourself with Timothys, who you also can lead and show the way forward because you know what it's like as well. And then find Barnabases in your life, people who will encourage you, people who will walk with you, but people who also go to bat for you, people who will stand up for you and be a witness to who you truly are, even when you forget. So I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. Send us a message. Let us know, who are those 5 people who you are spending the most time around? Tell us a story. How have you seen the people you spend time with the most shaping you? Maybe it's a story like you having an accent, like the person who you sit across from every week at lunch, or maybe it's the people who are influencing the ways that you think. I'd love to hear from you this week. I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Grace and peace, my friends. Have an amazing day.